Good afternoon, everyone. This is Christopher Kraus, your Learning and Development Specialist in North America, and welcome to our learning webinar. Today's webinar is called Cross-Cultural Awareness. I'm going to introduce our guest speaker in just a second, but before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. So first off, if you haven't already done so, please mute your mics and keep your videos disabled. We are going to be recording this session, and it's going to be up in Empower later on for those that were not able to attend today, for them to see in the future. We will have some Q&A time at the very end of the session. So if you have some questions, take a piece of paper, write it down, take notes. After we're done and we have the Q&A session, since we've got so many people on the call, we'll be doing that through the chat. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today. We've got Paulo Ribeiro with us. Paulo is our head of safety for North America. And Paulo, it's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the Cross-Cultural Awareness session of December 2020, the year that never happened. And this is my first time doing this online, virtually. We normally have these presential face-to-face sessions in Melbourne, and it's good to see the people. I think it works best when you can see the people, but this is what we have for today. So let's try and do our best. Of course, let me just have here. Of course, we are having this because of the pandemic. And if you think that these didn't work well, bear with me. And hopefully into 2021, I'm going to be able to do this face-to-face wherever you are with you. Okay? So this is our plan for today. I'm going to do a short introduction of this training. Then we're going to be talking about the culture, defining what culture is and what culture is not. Then we're going to talk about the effects that this might have in our business. And I'm going to bring to you some study models, things that you can use to map different cultures, including yours. Then on next Tuesday, we're going to do some comparisons between Brazil and the US using the study models that I introduced today. And we're going to be doing about how we should be doing business together, Brazilians, Americans, and any other culture that we have in the company. And then we're going to have some closing. So stay tuned, get back here on Tuesday, December 15th, and we're going to continue with our training, okay? So for today, a little introduction. Why do we think we have this cross-cultural awareness training? Why do we need these in our business? The answer is pretty short and pretty simple. If you haven't figured out yet, globalization, of course. We are everywhere in the world. Embraer has a presence in all the continents, and we are working across culture or cross-culturally with the whole entire world. At least in my business, I am doing that on a regular basis. On top of that, we brought some products to be built here in the US, like the Phenoms. And regardless of whether the printer is made in the US or made in Brazil, we also have a bunch of parts that are built in the US. Like 80% of the airplane, cost-wise, comes from the US. So worldwide interaction with our customers is a common thing. And on top of that, we also brought some defense products to be built here. Unfortunately, we didn't have the Boeing deal, so we won't be bringing the KC-390 here, but we have the Super Tucanos, and it's a very important thing for us. So we have to deal with Brazilians, Americans, Afghans, Nigerians, and everybody that buys this airplane. We have our customers. It's not only us. So we sell these airplanes to the whole entire world. And we have to deal with these customers from time to time. Not only in executive, but also in commercial, of course. This is one of the masterminds of cultural trainings, Dr. Geert Hofstede from the Netherlands. And this is what he says about culture. Culture is more often a source of conflict than of synergy. cultural differences are a nuisance at best and often a disaster. This is not me saying, this is the guy that's one of the top minds in this thing. So if you don't take care of how we do business across cultures, we might get into pitfalls. But you might be thinking now, why a guy in safety talks to me about that? Does it affect his business, my business in this case? Well, it sure does. And I'm bringing here to you one famous case. This is a Boeing 737 that crashed in Greece in 2005. Making a long story short, the airplane had came out from maintenance. The pilots, the crew never realized that they had the pressurization in manual mode. So the airplane took off, didn't pressurize. Everybody slowly passed out inside of the airplane due to hypoxia, lack of oxygen. And the airplane ran until the airplane flew until it ran out of fuel and crashed and killed everybody on board. At some point, they deployed two F-16s to see what was happening with the airplane because they lost contact. So this is the airplane trying to escort the 737, the jet, and the pilots of the fighters, they saw that everybody had passed out inside the cockpit. They were just there sitting, but not moving. And this is a piece of the wreckage. They were fortunate enough to find the pressurization panel still in the manual mode and understand what had happened. And what happens in this case is that's my profession. If you guys don't know me, I'm a safety investigator. So I support investigation with our products when we have accidents and incidents. So when these things happen, the investigation authorities, they do a very deep investigation. They look at all the aspects that might have played a role in that particular event. And these are some of their findings for this particular one. They found a poor CRM. CRM stands for Crew Resource Management, and it's a bunch of techniques, communication between pilot, co-pilot, and flight attendants, things that they expect the crew to do in order to better function together. So they found some poor communication between the crew. The captain and the co-pilot had different nationalities. The captain was a German and the co-pilot was a Cypriot, and they had different languages. When you're under stress, you don't think in English, you think in your own language. If you put me, I'm a Brazilian, if you put me under stress, I'm gonna think in Portuguese, I'm not gonna think in English. So this impairs your communication abilities when you have an emergency. On top of that, they saw some other cultural traits that they said that played a role in the accident. And this is something that we don't want to see, right? Losses of lives because of something simple as a cross-communication, cross-cultural thing. So it does affect my business, so much so that the International Civil Aviation Organization put together this Human Factors Digest, a special edition for cross-cultural factors in aviation safety. You don't need to read why this is important. I'm gonna have access to this presentation later. You already saw why this is important. But this is interesting. They suggest that any companies doing business in aviation should have cultural mediators. And if you read these, they're gonna say here, they're gonna mention specifically airlines, airline alliances, research institutions, civil aviation authorities, accident investigation services, and manufacturers. That's us. Can you name your cultural mediator? Because I can't. And I can count on fingers of one of my hands only. The companies that I know of in the aviation industry that have something like this. It's mostly airlines flying in Middle Eastern because they hire a bunch of pilots from the US or from Europe. But it's very rare to see something like this. But this is something that we need to create inside our own company. So my suggestion and the ICAO suggestion here is that we do have cultural mediators inside the company. It might be you, It might be me. Who knows? So let's define what culture is and what culture is not. When we talk about culture, all the words that you see here have something to do with this thing. Definition for culture, and definitions are going to vary depending on who's defining what culture is. But a good definition for culture is the sum total of the beliefs, rules, techniques, institutions, and artifacts that characterize human populations. It's kind of brainy, it's kind of academic, so I don't like it. My best definition for culture is collective programming of the mind. This is how it happens. You were born and you started receiving a bunch of inputs from your families, your peers, your society, uh, people from your own culture. So you learn how to recognize those people, how to recognize what is right and what is wrong. And that's what you need to survive in your society. Some specialists say that by age 7 to 10, everything that you should have learned to survive in your society is already embedded into your brain. And that's something that you can't delete. If you take a baby or a child, 7 years old, from the US and take this person to China, that person might adapt perfectly to the Chinese culture, might grow up in China, and it's going to behave like a normal Chinese until you put the person under stress or pressure. In that situation, that person is going to revert to her American mode. That's what happened to the pilots in the cockpit. Remember, when they were put under pressure, they stopped thinking in English, they stopped communicating to each other, and they behaved like in their own culture. This is what happens. There are three types of this collective programming of the mind, as we call it. The first one is your human nature. It's a bunch of things that you inherited, your instincts. That's universal. It doesn't matter where you were born, you're going to have your human nature. The second one is your personality. It's a bunch of things that you inherited, plus things that you learned along your life. And this is specifically, it's specific to you. It's your personality. And then comes culture. Culture is specific to a group or category of people, and it's made of only things that you learned. You learn to be an American. You learn to be a Brazilian. You learn your culture. Take a look at this map. Do you see anything wrong with this map? I can read the name of the countries. I can see the proportions and everything. There's no up and down in space. So why isn't this right? It's just a convention. On top of conventions, there's also the thing of a context. So is this lady doing anything particularly improper or wrong? Not necessarily, right? She's using a laptop by the beach. It's fine. However, if you put her in a meeting wearing a bikini, she's going to be out of context. I like to joke that if you're in Brazil, if you're in Rio, and guys in Rio wear their Speedos, if you're wearing your Speedo on the beach, you're fine. If you cross the street, you're going to start raising some eyebrows. And if you get into a bank, you're going to be arrested for indecency.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. What's up? That's okay. No, it's okay. I'm on a call all day, so what's up?
Hello, guys.
Hi. Hold on a second.
Please mute your phone. Yeah. So it's only a matter of context. And these things about convention and context is what makes our assumptions of right and wrong in our culture. What is right and wrong? Let's stop and think about this a little bit. Here's a definition. I got this from the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster. Definition of right: morally or socially correct or acceptable. Definition of wrong: behavior that's not morally good or correct. So we're talking about morals here. And what is moral? Concerning or relating to what is right and wrong in human behavior based on what you think is right and wrong. So it's a catch-22. Right is what is moral, and moral is what is right. Immoral is what is wrong, and wrong is what is immoral. So it's a catch-22. There's no clear definition of what is right, what is wrong. That's why in culture, we don't say anything is right. There's no right. There is no wrong either. There is only the different. So whatever is right in your culture might be wrong in mine and vice versa. But you gotta be careful about things that we think that are good and right in our culture when we're dealing with another culture. Some key elements of culture include language, religion, attitudes, customs, and norms of a group or society. So the best way to analyze cultures is to look at nations. Nations don't translate into countries. Most of the times they do, but sometimes they don't. Like, for instance, if you get a country like Switzerland, they have three nations inside it. Canada have two nations, the Francophones and the English speakers. But 99.9% of the time, nations and countries are a large group of people who share a common language, culture, ethnicity, descent, or history, okay? Of course, if you generalize on national traits, this is gonna break down with individuals. You don't abide by all the rules of your culture. There is some variation, but that's going to stand firm with large numbers. When you're in a group, you're going to behave like somebody from your own culture. So are we saying that we are all the same inside our culture? Of course not. But our culture is like this. It's like a palette. It's made of shades, different shades. But when we compare our culture against another culture, you're going to see a different palette. So the business of comparing cultures is not comparing one individual to another, but comparing a group of behaviors to another group of behaviors and beliefs, okay? A little exercise here. Let's test your cross-cultural knowledge. Take a look at this. I'm not gonna read it. So who is right and who is wrong in this particular situation? We already saw that there is no right or wrong. There's only the different. And this is what's happening in this case. Do you think that this happens in real life? I bet it does. And I bet you all you guys, if not all of you, most of you have some pets at home, right? Take a look at these pets here. Can you count how many pets? I can't because I don't see pets here. This is food. Unfortunately, in our culture, this is one of those dog food festivals, and these dogs are being prepared to be abated and eaten. We think that this is wrong. We think that this is horrible. But aren't we eating somebody else's pet? Pulled pork, anyone? Feijoada for the Brazilians? Aren't we eating animals that are not pets but are sacred to that particular culture? There are some cultures that don't even eat any animals. They are vegetarians. That doesn't mean that they are better than anybody else. They're probably the same ones that are chaining elephants and slashing them to work for them. So there's no right or wrong. There are things that are cultural. A little joke. Not to anybody, right? Not to everybody. Well, we think that we don't eat dogs because dogs are intelligent. That's what our culture says. However, we are killing these dogs. We are euthanizing 1.5 million pets per year, according to the ASPCA. We're just not eating them. So it's a cultural thing. Culture is that thing that defines us. Culture is right there, sorry, right there in our face, right? Not necessarily. If you look at this guy here, can you tell where he's from? He can be from anywhere. And that's one of the biggest traps, one of the biggest pitfalls in culture. Sometimes we look at a person and our brain has been trained when we were born and educated, has been trained to recognize faces that look familiar to us. If we are among those faces, we're fine. But this might fool us. Another little game here. We had the Summer Olympics in 2016 down in Brazil, in Rio. And this is the delegation of Australia getting to Brazil. Nothing particularly wrong with the delegation, right? That guy in the middle, that's the mayor of the city of Rio de Janeiro. That was the mayor by then. So this is one of those pitfalls. If you see the guy with a shirt saying Australia, you're gonna think that he's an Australian. Brazilians look like anybody. We can look like any culture. We have a huge mix of people, and Americans are pretty much the same. So we gotta be aware of these pitfalls. Here's another game. Try to look at these people and tell me if they are Brazilians or Americans. Make some notes, take some notes there. See if how many you get right and how many you get wrong. Is this guy a Brazilian or an American? How about this one? The lady here? This one looks like a Brazilian, right? This looks like a Brazilian as well. And this could be a Brazilian or an American. So let's see the answers and let's see how you got on this. The guys on top are the executive board of BMW, the guys in the bottom, the executive board of Volkswagen. All of them are Germans. So this is the pitfall of culture. Your brain is fooling you. You might start the conversation knowing that the guy is a German, but 5 minutes later, you're expecting him or her to act and react like a typical American because your brain is telling you they look like you, so they might behave like you. That's the biggest pitfall in cross-cultural communication. You might think that you're working with this and you're working with something like that. Like Brazilians and Americans. We are like computers. If you get a PC and a Mac and try to install a piece of software from one in the other, you can't. It's not going to run. But at the end of the day, they do the same thing. You can use them as word processors. You can build spreadsheets. You can surf the internet, listen to some music. At the end of the day, cultures is pretty much like computers. Remember that I said that we were programmed, brain wired. So cross-cultural communication is like this. We are small computers. We try to do the same things. We work for the same company, try to build the same product and sell the same services. But at the end of the day, Brazilians are running one software and Americans are running a different one. We might be careful when we try to bring things from one culture to the other because we are small computers. So how does this translate into the business arena? Culture in business boils down to this: communication. Communication, take a look at this. No matter what your job you have in life, your success will be determined 5% by your academic credentials, 15% by your professional experiences, and 80% by your communication skills. When I got here, I never told you where I graduated, what school I went to, or what companies I worked for, and what I did in those companies. You're here trusting in my communication skills. That's how important communication is. And we live nowadays in the age of the social networks. Everybody's using some social network. At this point, when I do this training in person, somebody raises their hand and says, I don't use Twitter, I don't use Facebook, I'm not into YouTube videos and anything like that. How about the computer? How about your email? Aren't you sending emails? So the email, it's the most powerful social network ever invented. On this planet, we send every day 190 billion emails, 110 billion of them in business alone. So it's the most powerful social network, especially because it doesn't belong to anyone. It doesn't belong to Microsoft, it doesn't belong to Apple, it doesn't belong to Google. An email is an abstract thing, it's abstract, and everybody's using it. To make matters a little worse, sometimes we pick up the phone and make the call instead of sending the email. And we might run across the same cross-cultural issues that we would be doing in the email. We might be running into this. You send an email thinking that, okay, everything is fine here. I can understand perfectly what I meant in this email. And the person on the other side of the line might understand that completely wrong. or might think you're impolite or something. So communication is what you say, how you say it, when you say it, and why you say it. The thing is, we don't see the world as we is, we see the world as we are. We're always looking at the world with our perspective, with our lenses. But what matters is what is true is not what I say, is what you understand. So that's why I have to be very careful when I write something. How is that gonna be understood? How is that gonna be received at the other end? Take a look at this piece of advertisement here from the US, breast cancer, beat cancer. Sometimes we try to translate things from one culture to the other one. And that doesn't always work. The best thing is never try to translate. You're gonna have to transcreate, to do over in the other culture. So when Brazil brings a new program, people here in the US will have to sit down and analyze the program that was built down in Brazil and see how it can be applied here. It's not whether it can always be applied here somehow, but is everything replicable? Can we just bring a program down from Brazil or vice versa? Take a program here from the US and take it to Brazil? Not always. We might have to transcreate our programs a little bit here and there. So I said that in general, there's no right or wrong, just different. And if you want to get business done right, you have to respect your customers' values, even if you don't share them. And your customer is anybody that's on the other side of the line, might be your peer, might be a colleague in your department. Like this guy here. As a chef, I'm not your dietitian or your ethicist. I'm in the pleasure business. If you gave a dog, because this guy passed away, but if you gave a dog to this guy, he would cook the best dog ever. So this is the thing. He was in the business of serving his customers. And since we are talking about food and it's right after lunch, let's talk about McDonald's, a huge company that does business anywhere in the world. Let's see how they did when they went to India and tried to sell a population of 1-point-something billion people their burgers. This is what they faced there. A huge pushback because most of India doesn't eat cows, doesn't eat beef, doesn't eat meat in general. As a rule of thumb, as a general thing here, McDonald's does things well across the globe. So, for instance, if you go to Germany, they sell beer. Here in the US, it's kind of unacceptable to sell liquor or to sell alcoholic beverages in fast food chains. That's not the case in Germany. This is what they did in India after their failure there. Beef, pork, and other products are not sold there in many stores. But the Japanese, they love pork, so they created the Mac pork for the Japanese, the Mac gazpacho for the Spanish, the Mac Arabia with lamb meat and pita bread, and a special bread and a special cheese for the French, and the Mac burrito in Mexico. So the thing is, they understand their customers. They see how the customer behaves. They understand their values. They have, in one word, empathy for the customer. Some people are exercising empathy with their customer or their business partner at that moment. This is Prince Charles when he went to New Zealand. And if you look at the bottom left, that's how the Maori tribe greet each other, touching their noses. So he's doing the local custom. Same thing with George Bush and the then king of Saudi Arabia. Friends in Saudi Arabia holds hand. So that's what he's doing. He's holding the hand of a person that he wants to be seen as a friend. The bow in Japan, that's how people greet each other. It's their custom. The French, like most of the Latins, they like this kissing thing, kissing people in the cheek when they meet each other. And here in the US, we have this firm handshake. Can you see how you can do wrong? Like, for instance, Brazilians are Latin, so we're pretty much like the French. We have this custom of kissing the ladies when we meet them, but there is some differences. If you try to practice this, but you're not aware of our culture, you might try to, if you're a man, you might try to kiss another man. We don't do that. Argentinians do, the Russians do, some other cultures do, the Italians do, Brazilians don't do that. Don't try to do it. Talking about the kissing thing, take a look at this. In Germany, at some point, they placed a ban on kissing in the office. They don't like this thing about kissing in the office. But what if Germany meets France for business? Well, they're going to have to adapt. Sometimes that's what we have to do. What I like to say is things that don't offend you profoundly, things that don't hurt you, are things that you can adapt if you're dealing with another culture. Doing this, you're developing your global dexterity. This is my definition of global dexterity. It's your capacity, your ability to adapt to another culture without losing yourself in the process. It's pretty much this. Or being like a chameleon. You're always the same animal. You're just taking different colors to make matters a little easier, to make business a little faster and more productive. If there are any ladies watching this and you don't like the chameleon, I bring to you George Clooney. It's the same thing. If you don't know Simon Sinek, this is a guy that he's a motivational speaker, a very wise one. I like him a lot. And this is what he says. 100% of employees are people. 100% of customers are people. 100% of vendors, of all stakeholders are people. If you don't understand people, you don't understand business. We don't have a camera here, so you can't see my face. So I brought you my face here, Photoshop. If you don't understand culture, you don't understand people. That's me saying. By the way, I Photoshopped this, okay, guy? I'm not that handsome. So let's move on here. Study models, that's the last portion of our training for today. It's gonna take some like 10, 15 minutes, and then we're gonna open to questions, okay? I bring to you here today 3 models, and from 3 different regions of the world, and from the 3 top minds on these, in my opinion. First one, Richard Lewis from the UK. Second one, Dr. Hofstede. We saw him in the very beginning of the presentation from the Netherlands. And then Ari Meyers from here in the US. Dr. Richard Lewis, he wrote this book. You're gonna have a handout, or at least the recording of this training later. So this is his book. You can try and find it on Amazon or something, and it's a very good book. This is what he does. He divided the culture in 3 major groups: the multi-active, cultures that are warm, emotional, loquacious, impulsive. Then there are other cultures that are reactive. And a 3rd group, that's the linear active cultures: cool, factual, decisive, plainness. Of course, you don't need to be in one of those 3 points there. It can be anywhere. So you can have a culture and halfway down from one point to the other. Then he lists several ways in how these people behave and do things. And then you can compare them. Let's say that you are talking about how people respect leadership, for instance. So one thing, one culture, the linear active are going to do it one way, the multi-active the other way, and the reactive another way. So if you read his book, you're going to see how this works. We're going to get back here on Tuesday, and I'm going to be using these 3 models to compare Brazilians and Americans. That's going to be our second part of the training, okay? So if you don't want to do that right now, just wait, and we're going to do that together on Tuesday. Dr. Hofstede did a little different thing. He created this model where he have 6 dimensions. First one being power distance, how powerful some people are in relation to others. Then individualism, how individualistic or collectivistic a person or a culture is. Masculinity, that doesn't have anything to do with the macho culture or anything. It's just societies that are more masculine, they reward success. Societies that are more feminine, they prefer cooperation and caring for each other. Uncertainty avoidance, how much of a risk taker you are. Your pragmatism, your links with your past and your traditions. And indulgence. Indulgence is how much praise do you expect at the end of something that you thought was right. And then he compares, he scores the cultures in these 6 dimensions and compares them with each other. Erin Meyer's model, the last one here, this is her book. She did pretty much the same thing as Dr. Hofstede. As a matter of fact, she built on Dr. Hofstede's model, but she created 8 dimensions, and somehow they are slightly different from the other model. First one is communicating. Second is evaluating, persuading, leading, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, scheduling. And this is what she does. Communicating goes from a low context communication that is precise, simple, explicit, to high context, nuanced, or layered. So low context, I say things at face value. If I don't like it, I say I don't like it. If I like it, I say I like it. High context, you're gonna have to read the fine print. You're gonna have to capture what I mean by what I say. Evaluating, some cultures have a direct feedback approach, and some cultures have an indirect feedback approach. This is straightforward. Persuading, people prefers to put out the principles first, and some people prefer to have the applications first, the practicality of the things that you want to do. So for some cultures, you need to, in the principles first culture, for instance, if I'm going to do this presentation, I'm going to have to introduce myself and tell the audience why am I able to do this, what sort of education, what sort of training, what sort of experience I have in order to do this. Applications first culture, if I'm going to deliver these to an applications first culture, I'm going to just get there and say, guys, I have something here that is very good for you. Take it, and then if you like it, use it. And you're going to believe in that and do it. Leading, some cultures are egalitarian and others are hierarchical. Deciding, cultures that are consensual against cultures that have the top-down approach on taking decisions, making decisions. And trusting, task-based, what we call the trust from the head, meaning I'm going to trust people that I know that have the skills to do something, versus relationship-based. In some cultures, it's not only, it's not about how capable the person is, but how much I like the person. And disagreeing, some cultures are very confrontational, others are non-confrontational. And the last one, scheduling. Some people have linear time, some people have flexible time. Linear time, one thing comes after the other. So I have to have a time to start and I have to have a time to end anything. Flexible time, I can do several things at once. I don't care about what time the meeting starts and I don't care about what time the meeting ends. That's the 2 extremes. Of course, like in all the models that we saw, you have some middle of the way here. You have some cultures that are not necessarily in one point or on the other point. So this is the frosting of the cake. I just want to open your appetite to go after the cake. Come back here on Tuesday, December 15, and we're gonna do the rest. Same bat channel, same bat time, and we're gonna be comparing Brazilians against Americans. Now, this was very fast. As I said, this is just the frosting of the cake. I don't expect you to get out of these trainings, even after the second session, as experts in culture or anything. And bear in mind, this is something that I had already shortened in our face-to-face meeting to 3 hours, and I'm trying to put everything in 1.5 hours divided in 2 sessions. So again, take these. I just want to open your eyes and open your hearts for the cultural differences. And hopefully you're gonna get back here on Tuesday and we're gonna do this thing together and compare Brazilians and Americans using the little bit of information that we got today. You're also going to be receiving at some point, I'm going to ask Chris to have this. You're also going to be receiving a handout after the last day of training, I would say, with all the and references that are used in these trainings, okay? Time for your questions. Chris, do you want to manage this?
Yes, so Paulo, thank you so much. This is really good information, and thank you for taking that 3-hour class, 4-hour class, and putting it into a virtual version for us so that we can continue learning even in this time period. So guys, we're opening the question up, the Q&A part. We're going to go through the chat. So I actually already have a first question from Marcelo. Marcelo asks, where do you draw the line between being empathetic and not giving up on your individuality?
Well, that's a good question. You're gonna have to exercise a little bit. Empathetic doesn't mean that you have to give up your beliefs and your positions. That's what makes a good negotiator. It's where you draw that line. There's no clear answer for this. The thing is, in some cultures, you're gonna have to push back strong, and in some other cultures, you're gonna have to be willing to concede sometimes. It's up to you to decide at what point you should concede and what point you should push back. So this cross-cultural thing, it's also trial and error. Sometimes you're gonna have to try and see what works and what doesn't work. If you have studied the other culture beforehand, using one of those 3 models, you will have a good idea of what type of people you're dealing with. So you could have designed your strategy before the meeting or before whatever you're doing. I don't know if that answers the questions, but
it's good thoughts to have, because it's not always cut and dry, is it? It's definitely up to interpretation.
Yeah.
So, all right, what other questions do you all have for Paulo? I don't see anything else coming in right now.
Yeah, I think people are going to have more questions when we start using the tools and comparing Brazilians and Americans.
That's a good point.
The questions are gonna pop, because as of now, it's a lot of information in a very short period of time.
Yep.
But guys, don't be shy. If you want to ask any questions, do it now, or you can always send me an email later. If you don't have my email address, Chris can give it to you.
Yep. I'm also going to suggest, guys, that since it doesn't look like many people are jumping at it, if you do have a question and you'd like to speak it, you can just take yourself off mute now and go ahead and ask your question. I always try to do the holding off on the unmuting first, since we, in case we have too many people jumping in. And actually, interestingly enough, I'm seeing, let's see here. Hold on a second.
Oh, I see that Marcelo asked another question. What's the most current school of thought when talking about culture?
Thank you.
There's no most current school of thought. Those three that I brought are the most talked about, I would say. There's different ways of using their models. My opinion is I prefer, in business, I prefer to use Erin Mayer's model. If you look at the scales that she built, disagreeing, scheduling, and everything, that translates very well into business. If you're dealing with, if you have more time to have an assessment of the other culture, I would use Richard Lewis model instead. So there are some models that are more precise and faster, others in one situation and others in other situation. I would say that the three that I picked, there are tons of them out there. The three that I picked, Richard Lewis, Geert Hofstede, and Ari Meyers, are the most famous and most used ones nowadays.
Very good. I only have one other comment from Doug. He says, Paulo, thank you for sharing this. He's looking forward to the follow-up on Tuesday. Yassine just has a question here. Do you believe that the concept of cruelty is universally understood across cultures, or do you believe that the thresholds of what is considered to be cruelty is culture dependent?
I would say it's a lot culture dependent. Of course, the Western cultures being so dominant in business, in money, I would say, economically, we are imposing a little bit of our culture in other cultures. So, for instance, in the Asian countries that kill dogs for food, like China, Laos, Vietnam, and some other places, uh, they're stopping doing that. They're still doing it, but they are not that common anymore. So we are kind of shaping the other culture. Culture is not something that's solid. It's always uh, you can always shape another culture. So we are doing that. The concept of cruelty, it depends. We think it's cruel to eat dogs, but we don't look how we kill cows and chickens. If you go see a slaughtery house, uh, you might become a vegetarian. So our concept of cruelty depends much on what type of exposure do we have to the subject.
Yeah, Paulo, it's very similar like horse. I know that in the U.S., horses are considered, to be not just pets, but it goes beyond that. In other countries, though, they're they're considered meat too. So, like, I was in Iceland a couple of years ago, and horse was on the menu for dinner one night, and it was a surprise to us. But it's just the culture.
And there are horse farms here in the West just for meat.
Yeah.
We just don't eat them. We
Yep.
export the meat. So again, it's a cultural thing, and some people think that okay, it's another business. So I'm gonna raise horses here to be slaughtered and exported, since Americans don't eat horses.
Yeah.
In
Good
Brazil, for
question.
instance, we have a huge industry that raises frogs. It's not that common in Brazil to eat frogs, but we export them to France.
Hmm. Very interesting. All right, guys, I have no other questions coming in right now. Oh, wait, we've got one more. Uh, Christine asks, is this cultural awareness training mandatory for all supervisors, managers, and leaders across all Embraer locations?
No, it's not. If it was up to me, it would.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think we should be doing this. I'm already do this for the past 4 years, and I think the company should be doing this.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, Christine, great question. Great question, and something for us to think about.
Yeah, I would love to see leaders sitting in my trainings.
Mm-hmm. most definitely. Well, okay, so with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. So, Paulo, I think we are done for the day, but we are looking forward to Tuesday, where we have the second part of the cross-cultural awareness session. So,
Okay.
Until then, everyone, we'll see you on Tuesday. We will normally, for those of you that are regulars for my webinars, we usually have a survey that happens right afterwards. But since this is a two-parter, we're going to hold the survey off until Tuesday afternoon. So you can wait until then. The survey will come with, I think Paulo has a couple of things for me to share with you all. So those things will be coming in as attachments along with the survey. But hey, everyone, thank you so much for being here today. Paulo, thank you for sharing your information, and everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you so much, folks, and thank you for being here. And it's going to be a great session on Tuesday when we're going to be using this little bit of knowledge to compare our two major cultures, Brazilians and Americans. Okay, see you on Tuesday.